Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to help change the world one person or one starfish at a time. As always, guys, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share. That's how we get the word out about what we do. I'm excited for our guest today. We met on, what was it?
I think Threads.
Threads, yeah, which I'm not really on a lot, but I was like, let's see if there's some awesome people on there, and there are. So Candace and I just met through there, and now we're friends on Instagram. Candace does something I'm excited to dig into. Is her company's called Better Brave, or her podcast called Better Brave, and basically helps mentor people and teach them about why podcasting is good for you and your business. So I'm excited to learn about that, and have you guys learn about that because you're on a podcast listening. So welcome to the show, Candace.
Hi, Angela. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to just dive in and see what comes out today.
Yeah, I love these things. So also a mom of three. And let's go back to, I always like to go back, way back. You were a teacher. So
Yep.
what grades did you teach? What got you into teaching? And then talk about the transition out into podcasting and coaching and mentoring and all that good stuff.
Sure, that's right. I was a teacher for 13 years and I taught fourth grade and then sixth grade. And my last 3 years of teaching, I had my three kids sort of back to back to back. And that's when I started to kind of realize, needing to crash when I got home and take a nap. And just that feeling of having babies at home and not liking how I was showing up for them started to wear on me. It wasn't that I didn't like teaching. I liked my colleagues. I just didn't know how to just not pour everything out while I was there and leave some in the tank for when I got home. And so that just wore on me. And over time, I started grasping at straws. I did different things. I was part of network marketing for a time. It's kind of I know people have a bad taste about it, but I do think it served a
I have a
great
lot of friends that
purpose.
have a pretty good taste. They make a lot of money and they help a lot.
Good. Yes.
So, yeah.
And done the right way, just like anything, it can be amazing. So I had a great experience. I was running a great business. I had a great coach. She put me got me into personal development. I had never been doing that.
Yes.
And I just started, the wheels and the doors started opening, the wheels were turning. That's when I started my own podcast. I started coaching other moms because I thought if I was feeling that isolated in my postpartum journey and when I'm supposed to be so happy, and this was all I knew I ever wanted to be. And here it was, and I'm not feeling like I'm enjoying it and just don't feel like my story's being shared. And so I was shy, I'm introverted. I thought I couldn't do this, but I had loved listening to podcasts. It helped me feel connected again. It helped me feel seen. And so that's how my podcast was born. It was to help the women in my wellness groups and accountability groups. And so it's really transformed over time and in where my heart lies now in that entrepreneurial spirit. So sharing entrepreneurial stories of other women in business. And then my solo episodes now are very focused on podcasting, podcast guesting, and just utilizing that. And I think it can help us all grow our businesses, especially online ones, in a very easeful way that's not in that grind and hustle culture, and also creates a really great ripple effect with letting more voices be heard, more people be heard, and then in return, people can feel seen and validated, and that can kind of really change the course of someone's life.
Wow. So what made you you were doing okay. I mean, I'm just curious in network marketing.
Yeah.
What had you get out? Are you still doing it or did you get out of it?
No, about the time when I left teaching, I also kind of stopped doing that. It's just one of those things that I was in my head thought, I'm going to hit this dollar amount and it's going to match my teaching income. And that's going to be how I leave teaching. That's
Mhm.
like my plan. The
Right.
teacher brain
Let's
plan
do
in
it.
my head. Yep, that's what I'm going to do. And I never quite hit that number. I got close a few times, but like never quite got there. And so it just turned into having to have just a tough conversation with my spouse. He's also a teacher. And so we got married and thought we were going to teach forever and retire. And, that whole story. And I kind of threw a curveball in there. And even though he doesn't quite understand, maybe even still now, 3 years into this, what and why this is so important to me, or why I am striving for this, he at least was able to say, "I don't quite get it myself. Like, I don't have that same mindset, but you need to be happy and you need to do what, is going to help you."
Happy wife, happy life.
Yeah, help you be happy. So, there was that, but, there was a lot of other things in place looking at finances, and we had been smart with money and didn't have debt, and so there's a lot of things that I'm grateful for that had led me to be able to decide that and be able to make that choice. But, yeah, the MLM part kind of fell away, just one of those things where it just felt like a little out of alignment, and so I just kept
Mm.
pivoting, I had gotten a life coaching certification, thinking I needed another certification to
Because you're a
qualify
teacher, that's
myself.
common.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have to have that. So then there was a mindfulness and meditation coaching certification, and then finally got to a point where it was like, I don't actually need that. I have some experiences, I have some skills, and I can go forth and help people and serve people as is right now. So yeah, just those little pivots. I'm a big believer in trying to work from alignment. And so just really checking in with myself that, hey, some of these things didn't feel great to me. This grind and this hustle didn't feel great anymore. And so I just kept trying to take the very next step that felt more aligned and more aligned, and then somehow got here.
Wow, that's cool. So, was there any entrepreneurial, people in your background, like your parents, like anything like that?
No, not really. And I think that's what made it so hard and scary. I have other friends that are easily jump in and out of things. And to me, that seems so foreign. My parents, my dad is a teacher, he's a principal now. So I have a lot of teachers, I have a lot of accountants, just professions that are very easy to say in one word, and everybody knows what you are and what it is.
Yeah, and it's
So,
like yeah, totally. It
exactly. Yep.
and,
Yep. And it's
okay, wow.
respected,
Yes.
and so now that was a big change to not have that, and in fact, at least a
Yeah.
year out of the classroom, when new people would ask me, "Hey, well, what do you do? Who are you?" I would answer it and say, "Oh, I used to teach," because it was so uncomfortable in my body to
Wow.
say the new thing. So when that light bulb moment hit, that was a big transition for me, and just really embracing that new identity, getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. And so I tell people that now you have to start talking about yourself in the present tense or even in the future tense, because what I kept calling into my life was the school kept calling me and asking me to substitute teach. Right. So it's kind of like I kept saying I was a teacher. So I kept getting teaching things thrown at me. So
Right. And did
really
you say
embracing
yes,
it.
or did you say no to someone? Like, how did you handle that? That's really
Yeah. Well, so I don't mind teaching. So occasionally I have gone in, even this year, sometimes, like if a friend of mine, especially, because I do know that there's such a substitute
shortage.
teacher shortage.
Mhm.
And so it does feel good to me. Like I try to just make those decisions when they come up. Like, does this feel like a good yes in my body? And sometimes it is. And sometimes it's like, no, I do not have the energy for that. That's very draining. So I do go in occasionally. I bet I go in like maybe 4 times a month. So not a lot, but it gives me a little taste and lets me see my colleagues again. And I kind of also reminds me how exhausting it is and that I'm in the right place.
Yeah, you're like, "Oh, I don't know that I wanna do that." So you
Uh-huh.
probably didn't have a lot of support whenever you transitioned, then it doesn't sound like even
No.
your husband was like, "I don't know, but I'll support you, but I don't know." And then I'm
Yeah.
guessing your family not very supportive, like your parents and stuff.
It was I
How did
think
you
I
find it?
look yeah, I know definitely there wasn't, like, people saying, "Yeah, just dive in." I
"You
have
got this,
basically
girl."
yeah, I basically have 2 best friends who, they're in it too. We have all since left our 9 to 5s together. We met in our network marketing days, and so I'm so grateful for that, because without those 2, I don't think I would have ever been able to leave. I just would have stayed, which I think a lot of people do.
Mhm.
And
Peer pressure.
and you just yeah, you just stay because you're like, "Well, it's not that bad." And we don't think we're allowed to trade it was good, it was okay, but didn't feel great. I didn't feel, like, excited, and
Mhm.
I didn't feel like I was showing my children how I would want them to live their life. So, it was tough. It was kinda one of those things that, my family didn't want to not support me, so because we are very close.
Right, they love
But
it,
again yes, but again,
but
like
they're
my
like, "What are
husband,
you
they
doing?"
they don't get it. They're like, "But this is a safe job, and, you have your summers off. Don't you like that with your kids?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, but no, you don't live my life." And I guess, like, it's hard to
Oh,
find words to explain to them.
yes.
So it turned into this thing where in order to, like, not feel like they weren't, supporting me, it just didn't get talked about. So it just was one of those things where, like, all of a sudden, my family
You
is
sent off
a bunch of teachers, so we could talk about that all day and all the time. So then it was like felt like this topic that, this elephant in the room that we would just avoid. So there's been some transition, and that's improved, but, you can look back and say they were doing their best. I'm doing my best. But we didn't know how to find the right words for the one to understand the other, which
what
can
would
be
you
very,
give
very hard.
That's really cool, like, I I love this for you because that would have been really tough, but a lot of people are going through this and wouldn't continue, so, like, what is it that kept you following your alignment, your goals, where you were going when so many people were like people you loved and they cared. And people were always like, there's haters. I'm like, these weren't haters. They really do care about you.
Yes.
Like, and they want your best interest. And then you have kids and you're like responsibilities and da 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 da, all the things I'm sure was going on. How would you like, what would you give someone for advice if they were kind of feeling the same thing?
Yeah, my best advice is, one, I hope that you can find at least one other person, and you might have to go look for them,
You'll find
and you
a
might have yeah,
friend.
that can kind of understand that entrepreneurial drive because it is different than someone that's extremely happy in their 9 to 5, and that's great for them, but, like, if you're different and you have that heart, it can be tough and vice versa, so one is to hopefully you can find at least one person because sitting with your own thoughts alone is, like, loony town, it's rough, and you do wanna burn it all down sometimes, and I have those days where I think, "Ah, maybe it wasn't that bad, maybe I should just go back, it might be easier, who knows?" And then you kinda remember, "No, no, no, remember, like, this is how it actually was." But, and the other piece of advice is you're gonna be really excited about the new things you're creating. Being an entrepreneur is a very creative space, and you're gonna have new things, new offers, new clients, and, new chances to guest like this on a podcast and meet someone new. That's really exciting to you, but those people aren't going to think that it's exciting. So you'll learn fast that when you share in this excited space, you might not be met with excitement or the same type of energy, and that can be really deflating. So either just unfortunately not sharing or reserving it for the people that you know are going to meet you in the energy that you're hoping for, or trying to prep the people in your life. If they do love you, they will hopefully want to try to improve as well in their communication with you. So saying things like, "Hey, there's this new thing. I might be starting this. I'm in the point where I'm just really excited and I want you to be excited with me," kind of prepping them that I'm not ready for this to have holes poked in it yet.
Mm.
That does help, and that's from therapy. That's like right from a therapist. So that helps. It's not perfect. It doesn't work every time. But it works more times than when you don't do that. So learning to do that and communicate that and just not be in your own head and hope that and assume that people are gonna get it, um, that can help. But reserving those big things that you're really excited about for the right kind of person, um, that's really helpful because otherwise you can really take the wind out of your sails really fast, and especially early on when you're not really established, and that's when it's
You're
easy to
already
just
questioning
say
what you're doing. You're
yeah,
like,
exactly. Throw in the towel. Send me
yeah.
back.
Wow, that's so good. Let's go into a little bit what you do because I think it's probably really good for our listeners. So tell us like what got you into podcasting and what you're doing with it and what your views are of like podcasting in general, I guess, for a business,
When
especially.
I first yeah, when I first started 4 years ago and I mentioned this it was to help the other moms in my community and share some mindset things, and it was really because I just kept feeling nudged. It was like a year of
Mm,
Googling, of thinking about it, and
sounds
just going yeah, going back and forth like, "Ah, I can't do this. I'm shy. You'll run out of things to say. Who would wanna listen to me? You don't want people at work to hear you." That kinda talk, and then just one day during nap time, putting the baby down and just had this flush of like, I know if I don't hit record today, I will be in the same spot I am next year, and I wasn't okay with that. So that very first episode's still out there. The episode is a straight shot. I didn't know how to edit, so it's all about starting before you're ready because that's exactly what I was doing, but it's really transformed. The mindset things are still there because I love that piece of life, and I think it's really important and vital for all of us, but it shifted into entrepreneurial things. So, especially in the last year and a half when I decided, "Hey, this is the vehicle that I want for my business. This is the thing that feels good to me." It's different than what social media feels like a grind to me. So that is I show up there some, but podcasting feels so much more easeful. It's long form content, it's searchable. There's just a lot of pieces that if you feel burnt out in your business, you feel like social media is like shouting to the void and is just hustle, hustle, hustle. Podcasting and guesting or one or the other can really fill that gap, and you can do it on your own time, and you can record when it suits you and when you're feeling good and inspired and creative. So that's why my mindset has shifted from, "Hey, this is a fun passion project. This is just a little thing I do," to, "No, this is the driving force in my business," paired with the guesting that I intentionally seek out aligned people that we have things in common with to to basically network. We're networking here. We're diving so deep into
Totally.
conversations. Like if I met you at a coffee shop, there's no way we would start talking about my what it was like to leave my 9 to 5 and not have the support I wish I had. And we wouldn't have done that. That doesn't happen. And I think that's really cool that that does happen in this situation within podcasting. And when you do it right and you find and you do your homework and find these aligned shows that have something, some type of value or message or mission connected to yours, and it obviously doesn't all have to match, but if there's something that relates, then it can be a really powerful experience, and it's just a great chance to stay connected to that host. And you never know what comes from year down the line, if there's referrals, if there's more collaborations, things like that. So it's been a really cool experience, and also felt, having gone through burnout, that this is a much better option than continuing to just hit that gas pedal down.
So what would you give someone, I love that. What would you give someone for, I don't know what the word is, idea, if they're listening to this, like, should they go look for podcasts? Like, how would you, go start, like, say, like they start not their own podcast quite yet, but they
Hmm.
want to be a
Hmm.
guest, like you were talking about.
Right.
How would you go about finding those podcasts? Because actually, I don't even know this question, so this is
Yeah.
good. How would you go about finding those podcasts that you want to be guests on?
Sure. There's a couple of ways to do it. One is a lot less time consuming than the other, but either way, start with what you would talk about. So I like to say, come up with 3 speaking topics. And if you can write them as podcast episode titles, and get really specific. So that will make it really easy. If you share that on threads or social media, that will make it easier for a host that's scrolling to really identify quickly if you would fit their show or not. Think about the value you're going to offer. Think about what makes you slightly different. In the podcasting space, I'm slightly different because I have hosted my own show for 4 years. And I've also, just this year, 2025, been guesting on over 30 and counting shows. So I have that 2 sides of the coin where I can kind of help prep you because I know how episodes go, and I edit and produce my own thing. So I have that as well as the guesting piece. So what is that little thing about you that's different, or your different take on things? And if you're still struggling to think of topics that you could potentially speak on, ChatGPT is a really great spot to start, helping you brainstorm ideas, and you can share what you do with it and say, I'm trying to come up with podcast episode titles that are really specific to my audience, my people. And then you can also look back and think you probably have some type of resource, a downloadable or a paid offer, service, something like that. What speaking topics align with that? That makes your talk on a podcast very easy, because the value that you're going to be giving, the part where you are that we're having right now, where here I am, I'm the authority on this today because I'm the one that's here talking about this, right? It's showing you in that light of being the expert in this field.
Right.
And that's really that piece that's going to really work for you. And the host is vetting you, saying, I've checked this person out and she knows what she's talking about. And so it makes it really easy for you to share things that you are really good at, really passionate about, but also they tie into your offers. So you can mention, I do help people with this. I do have a service with it. It doesn't feel so salesy. It's just saying, if you're someone that wants to take my tips and run with it on your own, that's amazing. I love that for you. But if you're someone that does not like DIY, you don't have time, you would rather speed this up and you want to pay someone to help you, I offer that too, and I might be your person. So I think that's important, that we are intentional when we're planning of what we speak. But if you can figure out those 3 speaking topics, and one more question you can do is, if you had to guest on a podcast tomorrow, you couldn't prep for anything, what would be your go-to topic? Because that usually gets people like, oh, I know, I would talk about this. So
Right.
if you have those, now I say just go post them on threads. And the one thing to think about, though, is I do see a lot where it's like, I have a goal to guest on 15 podcasts this year. I mean, who is going to stop at that? You're going to just keep scrolling, because that's focused on you and not how you're going to serve. As a podcast host, we care that you're going to come on and give value to our audience. That's what most of us care the
Right.
most about in some way. So you lead with that. That's why your speaking topics, it should be clear of what value you're going to bring. What tips are you going to bring? What actions are you going to bring the audience? So if you can post that, and that'll make it a lot easier for a host, like I said, to stop and say, oh yeah, that would fit mine. And then the same goes if you're on threads or social media. Threads especially, you can type in the search bar like podcast threads, podcasters, podcast guesting.
I'm learning how to use Threads.
Yep,
This is awesome.
yep,
I don't know
type
much
that in the
about it.
search bar,
Yeah. Cool.
and you're gonna get a lot of hits, and you might find hosts that are also sharing a detailed list of, I'm looking for these 5 topics to be filled by guests. If you fit those, it's so easy to write a comment and say, hey, I fit number 2. And, I would love to chat about if you're still looking for someone to cover that topic. That has worked for me for sure. And then a little more time consuming, but definitely worth it is, and this is the part that you may hire out and that I would do for you, but you can kind of go down a rabbit trail of podcasts. So it can get frustrating to start with because if you go to Apple or Spotify, those big platforms, and you type in, a keyword of some kind that fits your niche, you're probably just going to get really big production type podcasts. That's not the ones that people like us are trying to guest on. It's
Right.
not really going to hit. So you got to find a few smaller-ish podcasts or independently ran podcasts. So by chance, if you're listening to this, then you know Angela, so maybe you've had other podcast hosts on. Maybe you find them and you've connected with them as you're doing your homework, listening to Angela's show, seeing if you connect with her, seeing if you, vibe with her mission and things like that. And then maybe you see me and you're like, oh, I'm vibing with this episode. Oh, Candace is a host too. You hop over to mine. I've also had podcast hosts on as guests. You might hop over to theirs. And so it creates sort of this breadcrumb trail. And so I have a tracker as part of one of my resources. And so if I'm doing that one day, I will just be looking for the shows, linking them in there, trying to find the host's contact information or Instagram or, whatever,
Mhm.
linking that all in there. And so on a different day when I am ready, I might then start sending some DMs and then in that direct message, and I say a DM over a email because I think emails right now, we're getting too many bad
Yeah.
pitches. We're getting, as hosts, you've seen them. We're getting cold pitches from companies. They haven't checked for alignment. They are not even close to matching what we bring on our shows, and they're just getting thrown in the junk folder. So a DM is much more personal, even a voice note, because now they can even sense a little bit more of
How you
your,
sound. Yeah.
yeah, how you sound, your vibe. You just get so much deeper with a voice note. And who's not curious enough to just click open a voice note and be like, what? I wonder what this person is sending me. We're curious people. So in that, you're going to keep it short, but you should somehow be able to share that you've done your homework and show like how you do match in some way with the mission of their show and your message. And then that's when you follow it up with, and these are 3 potential topics that I know I could really serve your audience and bring a lot of value to that. So show you've done your homework and tell me how you're gonna serve my audience. That's what, I want to know. And just keep it nice and short, and then they'll let you know if you want to go from there. But that's where you start. That's a long answer, but, hopefully the first one is just, get it out there on social media once you've intentionally thought about those speaking topics, because that's kind of the groundwork. And then as a host, we don't have to think too much. We know exactly where that conversation is going to go. So,
That's cool.
mhm.
I love that. So switching topics a little bit. By the way, if you guys want, to reach Candace, we'll have all of her information in the show notes. So definitely reach
Awesome.
out. But I'm curious on this. This is kind of like off topic on the podcast, but
Mhm.
you're a teacher. You talked about all the degrees. Randomly, what are your thoughts on like post-secondary education
Mm.
now? Like, where would you direct your kids?
That's really interesting because, of course, I've already started talking to my kids about college, but I do catch myself thinking college in the United States is extremely expensive.
Yes.
I went to college on a full basketball scholarship. So that's another thing about me. I was an athlete.
Oh, cool.
And so I played basketball. And so my college was paid for. So it really wasn't a thought or a choice. It was like, well, what's the next step? It's free. We got to go get that degree. And that's what we do. But being in the world that I am now, there's not that many things that you need a degree for. Of course, if you're going to go be a doctor, absolutely. We would need you to have a degree.
Yes,
But
please.
yes, please. A lot of other things, I, unless you really have your heart set on something really specific that does require a
Like a
degree.
lawyer. Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't know if I'm all for it. I used to think, kids that took a gap year or something, it was just like a silly excuse. And I look at that now and I'm like, I went through college and I was a child. I was a baby. And I think, how are we spending tens of thousands of dollars or more when we aren't even like our brains aren't even fully developed? And but that's when we're gonna decide and declare what we're gonna do for the rest of our life. That's what it felt like to me.
Mm.
And so it just seems very absurd sort of now.
So,
And I can totally see why someone would wait a little bit to take a gap year, maybe go work some different odd jobs to see what they like, because I just don't know that I didn't have the experiences yet. I mean, I had a few summer jobs that I knew I didn't wanna work at a gas station. I knew I didn't wanna work, those types of jobs. Um, but other than that, I didn't have life experience to really affirm or help me decide what I wanted to be. I was just like, I come from a family of teachers. That's obviously what I'm gonna do. So, um, my stance has changed. And if my kids came to me and said they weren't sure yet, I would say, yeah, that's probably smart. I would hesitate now to invest tens of thousands of dollars in myself right now to learn or get a degree. So I don't know why it's so easy for us at that stage of life to just say, "Yep, that's what we do," when it, costs that much and we're so young. So I don't know, what's your
yeah.
take on it?
Well, I'm homeschooled. I don't even have a
Oh,
GED, so I don't even have my high school diploma technically.
interesting.
So that's my take on it.
Yeah,
Not against it, obviously, but
yeah.
yeah, I'm not at all
It
like, "You need to do it," like,
Yeah,
at
it's
all.
kinda one of those, like it's one of those rabbit holes I've gone down in the last many years of the world is so wild right now, but it's like it seems like one of those systems that was set up.
Yeah, have you read, and like I said, this is totally off kind of what I just thought it'd be interesting, and I like how you said it, like, I'm not against it, and I'm not either, I just not
Mhm.
obviously, like, everyone needs it at all.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
have you read the book Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill?
Yes, I have.
Okay, he talks about
Uh-huh.
that a lot in there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and our society and driving that, and yeah,
That was a
like I said, I was just
I
curious if
listened
you
to it.
were a teacher, your family's all teaching,
Yeah.
that, has to have a degree, and then normally teachers think people should have degrees, and then like you said
Uh-huh.
there, so I was like, but now you're an
Yeah.
entrepreneur and you've, like, got rid of
It's
that
really
and you're, like,
yeah.
doing things, so I'm like, where do you think now with your
It's completely shifted and changed. I wouldn't feel any kind of way if my child decided something else, as long as they, like, had thought it out and they were passionate about it and
and they could pay the
yeah.
bills, not live with
Yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah.
go
So,
go support yourself.
yeah, it's completely changed, that's for sure. I'm
Just
a lot more open-minded and I can 100% see why homeschooling is increasing. I've thought about it myself, although I think I'd go crazy. So, I don't know if that would be great, but
yeah, I was
yeah.
thinking that actually, I was like, you'd be good at homeschooling because you
Yes.
are actually a teacher, so
Uh-huh.
you do a great job, but that's like I said, I just was curious when you were talking about it, I was like,
Yeah.
"Hmm,
Interesting. I
that's
like I
yeah."
I l I love that we went down that road, but
Yeah, well, like, yeah, I just I find that interesting. So in wrapping up, I always have 3 final questions, and then anything we didn't touch on that you think would be really impactful for our listeners, and guys, like I said, make sure to obviously check out Candace's podcast and her works and stuff. I know you'll get a lot of value there. But first and final question is if someone is looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you would say that could help them find it?
mm, pause, check in with your body. If you're trying to make a decision, think about how it feels in your body, and this has helped me a lot stay in alignment is I think, if I did this, would I feel regret or would I feel relief? And that can really help navigate.
It's a good one. I like that.
Mhm.
Second question is what's a favorite quote and why?
Mhm. I don't know who said it, but I say it a lot, and I think it's just a constant reminder that we need is let yourself be a beginner, start where you're at. We wanna walk into every arena and just be as good as the people that we have been listening to it on podcasts or the big production companies that have tons of editors and people producing their shows, and we wanna walk in and be like that, and that's not the case, that's not how it works, and so just don't let that be a reason that you don't get started on something.
I like that. Third and final question, what's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
Mm. I'm just what comes to mind is mother. That's the most important job I have, so I think I'll
That's
go with that one.
like that. All right, you run into someone in a coffee shop. They listen. Now they're starting to be on threads, and they're posting, and trying to look for being on podcasts, and they're rethinking all their diplomas and all the things we went
Yes.
through. Anyway, what is something we didn't touch on that you think would be really impactful to leave our listeners with?
That we didn't touch on. We covered a lot. Um, I would say it kinda goes with start where you're at. But one thing that holds people up a lot is I need to learn one more thing. I need to know how to edit before I can start my podcast. I need to know this one more thing. And the truth is you don't. And you're going to learn so much more by just doing it. If it is a podcast, if it is guessing, it's hitting record on that first one. You will figure out so much more than Google could ever tell you. And it is okay to share that imperfect part. It's okay to do that first guesting on a podcast and not sound perfect, because your people are out there waiting for you, your take, your message, your style. There's a reason they haven't connected with me yet. There's a reason they haven't connected with someone else yet, because they're literally waiting for you. There are so many people on this earth. I 100% believe that there are listeners and clients and enough people for all of us in this space. And so they're waiting for your take. And so don't be afraid to share that imperfect journey, because I think that the right people will love to see that, and it will help them think that they can do it too.
I love that. That's awesome. Guys, let's share this. Obviously, let's go out there. If we can change one life or one starfish at a time together, we can help change the world. Thanks for being on, Candace.
I love it. Thank you for having me.